Today, as we celebrate this commencement, we are missing one of our graduating class, Josh Guimau. His mom, Lisa, wrote the following to you. The family of Josh Guimau would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the graduates of the class of 2004. We know how proud Josh would be to be standing here among you. He was proud to attend this university and to call himself a Johnny. We would also like to thank everyone for their continued support, thoughts, and prayers in the search for Josh. Please help us to keep hope alive until we bring Joshua home. Let us have a minute of silence for Josh and for his family. Loving and gracious God, we give you thanks for all the gifts that you have bestowed on us, especially for those people who have made this day possible. Energetic and committed students, generous parents and benefactors, and devoted faculty, staff, and administrators. Guide us with your wisdom, strengthen us in your service, and the service of all your people. We ask this through Jesus, our risen Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever. Amen. Please be seated. As Chancellor of St. John's University, on behalf of the sponsoring Benedictine community and in the name of the Board of Regents, I herewith call into session this commencement convocation at the conclusion of our 147th year of the conferring of academic degrees granted by the university. I request Brother Dietrich Reinhardt, President of the university, to take charge of these exercises.
This is a day of glad and joyful celebration. St. John's University has kept this day each spring since its founding before the Civil War. At commencement, we call to mind the core purpose of this university, the cultivation of the intellect, through study of the liberal arts and graduate theological disciplines. The cultivation of the intellect within a distinct experience of community, which draws on the deepest wellsprings of human culture, fosters understanding of human interdependence, and calls forth full, integrated lives of faith and reason, action and love. Those who have lived, studied, and prayed at St. John's reflect in different ways about their experience. Alumnus Al Isley quotes Dostoevsky about a good sacred memory that is perhaps the best education. And if a man carries many such memories with him into life, he is safe to the end of his days. Roger Nierengarten speaks of a Benedictine principle experienced more than once in his years of study, that life must first be endured before it can be enjoyed. Joe Tingley speaks of a bunch of guys packed late at night in a little dorm room, talking honestly about real issues in their lives, all over a raging computer game that frankly I've never heard of. And Betty Wall Power, graduate of the College of St. Benedict and author, speaks of 100 small silences knotted together like a string saver's ball into the great sacred silence of this space. Sacred memory, endurance, late-night sessions, silence. Whatever words we use pale before the reality of this remarkable graduate class who has entered into the heart of this place, delved deeply, and begun a trajectory greater than any one of us can imagine. People who we regard today with full and joyful hearts because of the learning and personal growth you have cultivated here at St. John's. On this joyful day, in this long-hallowed place, you, the class of 2004, enter a long stream of St. John's graduates who gathered together one last time to celebrate how their lives had been enlarged by what they had learned here, by the teaching and mentoring of professors known by their first name, by the cultivation of friendship and solitude, prayer and service, by the sheer beauty of this place and its power to anchor a whole life's journey. We join together in a ritual that places us outside time a bit, so we can all concentrate our minds upon this remembered earth, shaped so indelibly by lives lived together in community these last years. The ritual of commencement brings before us for a brief moment the habits of mind, the capacity for wonder, the inbreaking of truth, which result from the great amiable conversation of ideas, which is at the heart of this Catholic and Benedictine liberal arts community. Ritual time. Scarcely any of us will remember much of this event, but it will live on to sustain the deepest truths of our lives. And so it is fitting that we enter into the heart of this commencement with the address by a member of this graduating class who has been selected by his classmates. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Michael Marschel.
Brother Dietrich, Abbot John, Dr. Cahoy, Dr. Smerinsky, distinguished guests, grandparents, parents, families, fellow classmates, welcome once again. There are three things I'd like to talk about today: memories, growth, and gratitude. Each of these topics have been related to our lives, to the living things comparatively known as trees. As a tree changes with the seasons, it speaks of memories. Time goes by too fast. There never seems to be enough of it. Where have we heard that one before? Our orientation leaders, our parents, siblings, teachers. Sure, college and grad school is like no other time in your life. You're free from constraints, free to make your own choices. You know, that large graduation picture down at the basement of Sexton Commons, well, that's us. That's us right now. Wake up from your midday nap, You're late for class. Well, you missed the link. Is it an odd day or an even day? I'll meet you on the tundra. Now, these phrases have become part of our language here at St. John's, and just because it's been known as our home. Now, during my first year here, as some of you may have experienced, I went home on a weekend, and my mom got upset when I told her I had to go home on Monday. She said, "Well, this is your home." We will always have the home where we grew up, and our home here at St. John's has been that for 4 years. So now we'll have to be looking for those new homes, those new careers, new ways of life. There are places we haven't seen here at St. John's, things we haven't done yet, just because time goes by so quickly. I mean, that goes for all of us. It was like yesterday, we were meeting our roommate, laying out the carpet, designing our lofts, and then off to Playfair, which I think was one of the craziest, strange times I've ever been at. It was like we were screaming and running around half the time, and then someone said, "Here, meet someone." And then there was symposium. And what about chilling at the pub? Yes, we have begun to say goodbye to relationships and the marks we have met. But we don't say goodbye forever, simply because now we're alumni. So, before you grab the world by the tail, wrap it around, pull it down, and put it in your pocket, I'm here to tell you a random thought. Have you ever walked around campus late at night and thought you were the only one there? It's a really interesting feeling, it really is. I thought to myself, what would be some words maybe to describe your 4 years here? What would you say? Fun-filled, memorable, stressful, crazy, never forget. Time? Wow. Why? Friends? Or maybe community? I guess the word I would pick is growth. As a tree survives the elements, it speaks of growth. After 4 years at St. John's, our roots have grown deep here. And there are 3 ways that I believe, or 4 ways I should say, that either we have experienced this form of growth. First and foremost is academic growth. We came to St. John's with the expectations of one day receiving the most coveted degree from St. John's University. And after deciding on a field of expertise, our minds began to mold and take shape to the intellect we permanently have as part of our being. Just as an adolescent goes through puberty, we have experienced the learning growing pains our classes have stimulated for us. Let me ask you this. Have you ever studied so hard for a test you thought your eyeballs were going to fall out of your head if you didn't just take a break, sleep, or pump some caffeine? Or maybe you studied so hard for that same test only to find out that you bombed it, and you said, "Well, I'm not going to study for that test next time." And then you ace it. I don't know. The second form of growth is athletic. Maybe you experienced athletic growth, be it by watching a sporting event, like our fabulous football team as they shine their way into Division III record books, or if you were one of the 600 varsity athletes on campus who strive for greatness in the MIAC and beyond to national levels of competition. Perhaps your intramural team dominated the scene, or maybe your club sport represented the Johnny name with pride. Not all of us are athletes, but in some ways, some of us have developed our athletic capabilities, maybe in the weight room, for example. And others have grown in the appreciation of our strong athletic programs. So, have you ever experienced a competition only to fall short by a few inches or to win by a mile? Or have you ever felt goosebumps while watching a game, not sure of the outcome? Off the field and into the realm that may appear to go unnoticed here on campus, but its beauty and messages stretches far beyond our comprehension. Well, what kind of growth is this, Michael? It's the third A, really. Artistic, of course. Have you ever walked through one of the Art Center buildings and just marveled at the pieces on display and just thought of their significance of each one? Have you ever heard the sounds of the choirs as they echoed off the great hall walls? Or maybe enjoyed one of the many theater productions as they not only entertained us, but stirred our emotions? Or how about the orchestral resonance? Or the band's flowing melodies? Or the jazz band's riffs and blues? Finally, there are those of us who have stretched out our branches and grown religiously. Our School of Theology students studied the many facets of faith and how beliefs and thoughts have changed over the centuries, while others remain unaffected. St. John's is Benedictine values. This university was founded upon these virtues, sacramental views of the world, and seeking the common good, which our monastic community models so well. Have you ever experienced a 9 o'clock student mass, a modest Wednesday night, or prayed the Liturgy of the Hours with the monks? Or maybe you felt intrigued over a theology or a JC class, and somehow your life was affected by it. These are just 4 areas of growth that St. John's has nourished us with. And my hope is that we'll continue to develop our being and produce good fruits for all those we come in contact with. As we begin to fathom our future, I want to take a much-needed opportunity to thank those who have helped us to cultivate our bodies, souls, and minds. As a tree is nourished by the sun, soil, and water, it speaks of gratitude. First off, we must thank our parents, especially our mothers on this day, that we've come to honor them. All the love and support, just everything they do for us and continue to do, has helped us reach this point in our lives. Thank you to all the gifted professors and the past teachers we've had for challenging us to develop our minds and hearts to new heights. From Melchior Freund, Bob Dumontceau, to the newest hiree. Thank you, friends, for all you do for us and your sweet action, support, and loyalty. Thank you, monastic community, for opening your home to the students. The stories you share and the example of Christ you live out has truly been an example. Thank you, Refectory and Jennifer Anderson, for the unbelievable food service crew. My memories at the Refectory are some of the fondest I've ever had here. Thank you to our first-year FRs, Father Don Talifas, Father Nicholas Daub, Father Bill Shipper, Brother Walter Kiefer, Brother Neil Lalou, Father Nay McGraw. Your guidance and words aided our welcoming. And thank you to the coaches, John Harrington, Bill Saxton, Jerry Haugen, David Johnson, Pat Haas, John Gagliardi, Bob Alpers, Jim Smith, John Elton, Jack Bull, and Tim Miles for believing in us and teaching us how to succeed. Thank you, St. John's University and College of St. Benedict, for preparing us for the places that we will go and the things wherever the wind may carry us. Everyone here and those who are no longer with us deserve our recognition and thanks. Now, if you haven't noticed, if you know me by now, I've been alluding to trees today, and St. John's has a lot of them. Wood is a beautiful thing, and it can be used to build many things, including desks, churches, and doors. And I thought to myself one day, just what if those things made of wood and the trees of St. John's here could speak? What would they say? Rabindranath Tagore gives a spiritual quote about these earthly wonders. Trees are the earth's endless effort to speak to the listening heaven. Some of you who know me know that I'm a sucker for poetry, I guess. So I give you If Trees Could Speak. If the trees of St. John's University could speak, what would they say? I've heard many tales and seen all the games you play. Well, I've heard many lecture and held many a sleeping student. You did fine on that quiz. Know why? Because you're prudent. Well, hey, I've witnessed many a mass in the great hall. And me too, in the Abbey. I've witnessed them all. Speaking of which, did you use flex at the refectory? Or even finish that equation in the laboratory? Remember your grandfather, your uncle, your brother, your dad. They were once in your shoes, you soon-to-be college grad. Me, I was slammed, true, but I kept out unruly neighbors. I'm a popsicle stick which comes in many different flavors. Tell me, trees, what does the future hold for me? I'll tell you, said the tree. Sit here on my knee. Oh, you'll go fascinating places and meet wonderful folks. Tough decisions you'll make, so don't get tricked by the world's hoax. You'll travel the world and back again. Things will turn out right. After college, it's a wild ride, so be sure to hold on tight. I have seen Johnny's success and read about their dreams. Come true they do, if you follow the right streams. Trees, what else? What other advice can you give? A wise old tree back in the monastery said, learn to forgive. It raised its leaves and branches and spoke. I have a friend who's of the family oak. She said, now you have knowledge. Use it, my friends, all that you've learned in college. I will miss you, trees. I'll do what you say. Well, I will miss you too. And for you I pray. When the morning sun rises over the Abbey bell banner, until it goes to sleep over Stump Lake in gentle manner. When ignited and heated, we trees will burn. So keep SJU close to heart and remember to return. Well, fellow graduates, this isn't the end, no way. I'm going to show this world a thing or two. We're going to show just what we can do. So as the rule of St. Benedict first states, we need to listen carefully and listen to others, even if it may be a tree. So on a closing note, oftentimes we asked ourselves, did you find yourself in college? Well, if you did, congratulations. And if not, that's cool too. However, I think we all found a little something in ourselves, a Johnny. Each one of us have lived a different experience here, be it solid like an oak, soft like a birch, maybe sweet smelling like a cedar, or sweet tasting like a maple. So, let the celebrations begin, let the summer commence, let the good times roll. Congratulations, everyone, and God bless you in your dreams, pursuits, and endeavors.
Dr. David O'Fallon, he is a 1965 graduate of St. John's who has committed his life to the arts and to the passionate extension of all art forms to everyone. He's spent his life teaching about what he loves and cares about, the importance of the arts to human development, and the vital, even critical role art plays in imagining and creating the world we experience. His impact on national policy, the current federal legislation which contains the arts as core subjects, is directly due to his persuasive talents. After St. John's, Dr. O'Fallon received his PhD from Union Graduate Institute in Cincinnati. In 2001, he became president of MacPhail Center for Music in Minneapolis, one of the nation's largest community music schools. Prior to that, he was executive director of the Perpich Center for the Arts in Golden Valley, a state agency charged with bringing the arts to all, from kindergarten through the 12th grade. The center also houses the Minnesota Arts High School. Dr. O'Fallon spent earlier years as a consultant to the Leonard Bernstein family on the Leonard Bernstein Center for Learning, as director of the National Task Force on Arts Education, John F. Kennedy Center, and education director for the National Endowment for the Arts. A board member of a number of prestigious local and national organizations, Dr. O'Fallon has widely consulted with educational and arts organizations across the United States and abroad. And he is a frequent keynoter at national and international conferences. His expertise is sought on all issues confronting the arts today. Dr. O'Fallon's tireless dedication to the arts and their many permutations provides all those devoted to their promotion with inspiration and a model. David, will you please come forward? In your quiet way, you have deeply influenced the direction of arts education in the United States. You have guided every variety of institution, from urban alternative schools and small rural nonprofits to large national and multinational organizations. You have done this with care and concern during a seminal period of change in the manner Americans understand, support, and encourage the arts. Your impact on the discussion of federal legislation affecting the arts as core subjects in our schools was enormous. You helped articulate the way we view and discuss the arts, connecting the skills and knowledge gained to the broader concerns and issues of the day. Whether through the development of the very young or the involvement of a growing number of senior citizens who feel disengaged and uninspired, you have blazed a trail of innovative programs that have improved arts education. As a St. John's University undergraduate and thespian, you first appeared in shows at the Benedict Arts Center and later taught at the College of St. Benedict. Your PhD thesis was the founding of the internationally acclaimed In the Heart of the Beast Theater in Minneapolis. Whatever the challenge, you were at the heart of it, whether it be a new direction, educational reform, national standards for the arts, an ambitious role in the building of a new facility and program, the development of a novel partnership and an underwriting relationship, a consultation that affects millions of school children, or service on an influential board of directors. You are a visionary, a creator, a doer, and you have become a dynamic agent of change for the way arts education is considered today. You once observed, "What story will young people tell to make a life, to make sense of the world?" Working in the arts provides us a vessel to hold the search, a vehicle for the quest. For your commitment, your generosity of spirit, and above all, for providing a vessel for the search for both young and old, St. John's University recognizes you with gratitude and confers upon you, David O'Fallon, the Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, on this 9th day of May, 2004.
Thank you, Brother Dietrich, for those wonderful, kind words. Thank you, Abbot Clausen. My congratulations to the graduates of this year as well. I want to thank also a very special person in the audience today. My 96-year-old mother is here. So, There she is. Great. Thanks, Mom. She still has tips for the improvement of my character, the advancement of my career. Who knows what's next? Mom, right. I was pleased, Michael, in your wonderful address that you used poetry. And I'm going to leave you all with a fragment of poetry. I'll be very brief. I will say to you that wherever you go in your life, you will use the power of story to organize what you believe and what you do. I'm very grateful to be a graduate of St. John's. I'm very grateful for the experiences at St. Benedict's. I take with me in whatever I do much of the spirit and tradition of these places. And I will say to you that I draw upon them now even more than when I sat where you are some 40 years ago, having just walked over from room 339, Mary Hall. Here's the fragment of poetry I'd love to leave with you today. Only when love and work are one, only when love and work are one, and work is play for mortal stakes, and work is play for mortal stakes, is the work truly done, is the work truly done for heaven and the future's sake. Only when love and work are one, and work is play for mortal stakes, is the work truly done for heaven and the future's sake. I'm very honored by this degree. I will do my best to carry forward the traditions of this wonderful Benedictine institution. Thank you very much.
Just 10 years ago, Thomas Beaudoin began his theological studies at Harvard Divinity School, pursuing the discovery of God in all things. In the short time since, his spiritual quest on behalf of Generation X has generated several books, monographs, dozens of published articles, and innumerable interviews and conferences and lectures across North America and around the globe. After graduating from the University of Missouri, he taught high school and was named one of the best new teachers in the nation by the Sallie Mae Corporation. After Harvard Divinity School, he wrote Virtual Faith, the irreverent spiritual quest of Generation X, a very personal book to better understand himself and his spiritual life. He is a man who understands contradiction, a practicing Catholic who has served in the Israeli Defense Force, an avid rock musician and dedicated web surfer who encourages media fasts. He offers us an insider's perspective on Americans in their 20s and 30s who grew up with a spirit of opposition and experimentation. He currently teaches courses in theology of the popular culture and everyday life at Boston College. With wisdom and insight far beyond his years, Tom encourages young and old to embrace the risk of loving each other and God. Tom, will you please come forward? St. Benedict believed that all members of a community had something important to say. Even the youngest were consulted because the Lord often reveals what is better to the younger. Tom Beaudoin, your groundbreaking work, Virtual Faith, embraced that fundamental principle of Benedictine life when you called the Church to listen carefully to the wisdom and the understanding of Generation X and of subsequent generations. Your research was called courageous, creative, confronting, because it sparked debate and discussion within the church and academic circles. You reminded us that the spiritual quest does not always look the same from age to age. Young people today seek God in different and very unexpected ways, from the revered traditions of Catholicism to the more irreverent modern expressions such as music videos. The phenomenal success of virtual faith has made you a tireless and much sought-after road warrior of academia. In the midst of this unexpected acclaim, you published your much-anticipated second book, entitled Consuming Faith, Integrating Who We Are with What We Buy, which has also won critical acclaim for brilliance and clarity. While your days are filled with writing and teaching, you even find an occasion for your long-time passion of playing in rock bands, for making an impact on the face of Catholicism and on modern culture, for dedicating your life and energy to young people of our church and our society, for respecting the voice and wisdom of all generations. St. John's University confers on you Thomas More Beaudoin, the Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, on this 9th day of May, 2004.
Is the air conditioning working in the back? No? I'm just going to refresh myself before I make a few remarks. I am honored and humbled by this degree. I am challenged because they have given it to me at age 35, and my career could become a disaster after this. I don't know what's going to happen. But I will do my best to live up to the honor that this degree has conferred on me. I'm very grateful to President Reinhardt for the courage and the trust to give me this degree. I'm very grateful for the generosity of a friend who first introduced me to the Benedictine charism, who first showed me that this community was a community of love, of intellectual rigor, of welcoming. This friend who I'm speaking of, many of you know, many of you are fans of this man. I thank you, Timo, Father Timothy Bacchus. Now that I have a law degree, I was thinking, if any of you had a little whiplash coming in the church today, a little slip and fall, talk to me after the service. I must extend a welcome to all the mothers. Especially, I'm very proud to say, my own mother, Renata Beaudoin, is here today, and I wish her a happy Mother's Day. She's here with, where is my mom? She's over there. Hi, Mom. You can hardly see me. But that's your fault, by the way, that I'm not taller. And I want to thank the guy sitting next to her, her husband, also known as my dad, Ross Beaudoin, who's here, along with a family friend, actually a former Benedictine, a very old family friend, Jim Deutsch, who was their best man at their wedding in 1967 and now lives around here. So thank you to my family for being here. Now, I was asked to give this commencement address about a year ago, and it got me thinking about my own commencement in 1992, 12 years ago, University of Missouri. Now, I've had a few commencements since then, and much of what I will say to you in the next few minutes will apply to those other commencements. But I graduated University of Missouri in 1992, sitting in a room not unlike the room in which you're sitting, a degree in history, a degree in secondary education. And when I went back to my mentality as an undergraduate, finishing my studies 1992, I think, what was my plan for my life? I did have a plan. My plan was to teach high school. I had been inspired by my high school teachers. I wanted to spend the rest of my life teaching high school, perhaps as some of you are planning to do. My plan was to spend the rest of my life with this particular woman with whom I was involved at the time. I will not say her name to protect her identity. But we were very involved and very serious, and I was sure this was going to last the rest of my life. I had a plan that I was going to be a particular kind of Roman Catholic Christian. I had a plan that I was going to live in Kansas City, where I went to school, where I grew up. My parents still live in the area. I was going to live in Kansas City my entire life. I had a plan that my political commitments were basically going to stay the same, that I had figured out who I was politically. That was my plan in 1992. Maybe you have a plan today for where you are headed with this degree. I thought I knew what my vocation was. I thought I knew how to get there. I thought I could do it in a straight line. Here we are 12 years later, 2004, and as I look back on the last 12 years, what strikes me is not the directness of my route to my vocation, but its indirectness. What strikes me most is not that I went the most easy, simple path, but I have wandered through many different domains of my life on the way to my vocation, which at 35 I'm still unpacking, trying to figure out, praying through, working through. I wandered through different jobs. I ended up teaching high school for 2 years. I loved it. I loved my students. I enjoyed it. I was pretty good at it, but I burned out. After 2 years, I couldn't do it anymore. I had to find something else. So I went on, I worked, maybe some of you have done this or will do this, I worked in temp jobs. Have you seen the movie Office Space? It's kind of like that. It was like that for me anyway. I was copy boy, I was administrative assistant, I was secretary. I did that for several years. I made my way through graduate school, which is kind of a job of its own, as many of you today know. And then I ended up as a college professor when I finished my doctorate a few years ago. I've wandered through different jobs. I've wandered through different relationships. The woman I thought I was going to spend my life with ended up not happening. There have been several other relationships that I've had since then, and I thought, okay, this is the one, thank you, God, let's go. Let's just stay in this track. It didn't work out that way. I've been wandering through relationships. Only now, for the last 8-9 months, very happily married to a woman that was not part of my plan A. I'm Catholic, she's Jewish. It sounds like a sitcom, doesn't it? I'm Catholic, she's Jewish. She's a psychotherapist. She used to do improv comedy. She's trained as a hypnotist. This is not who I thought I would choose. But, Martina, I know you're watching this on the webcam. I love you. You are my angel, and I'm very grateful for her. She was not in Plan A. Plan A was, again, that I was going to live in Kansas City my whole life. Well, what has happened since college is from college to today, I have had 16 apartments. 16. In Kansas City, Boston, Atlanta, and now, as of last week, Palo Alto. Because I'm moving now to take a job at Santa Clara University. 16 apartments. I get a mental hernia just thinking about 16 apartments. Unlike a lot of you men here, I haven't been to the gym very often, so it's a lot of work for me. It's a lot of work. Wandered through my faith. Late teens, early 20s, by the time I was graduating from undergraduate, saw myself as a Roman Catholic, but pretty soon I was wandering. I was functionally Southern Baptist for a few years, going to Southern Baptist services. Then I met an interesting Jewish woman in my mid-20s. I was going to Shabbat services, to the temple, to synagogue. Then I spent some time as an agnostic. And now I'm back to Roman Catholicism as my center of gravity spiritually, but retaining what I learned through the wandering. And still wandering through Roman Catholicism, because as you know, Roman Catholicism, it's a frickin' big tent. Right? It is. It is. Any church that can contain, on the one hand, Opus Dei, and on the other hand, liberation theology, that's an interesting church. That's an interesting church. It's where I've come down for now and for the foreseeable future. Wandering, not stability, wandering to and through my vocation. Now this, as a theologian, of course, puts me in, and perhaps it does for you too, puts me in mind of the Scripture. The Scripture that it puts me in mind of, perhaps, is the one that came to mind for you, the book of Exodus. Especially chapter 14. Now you know the story, the book of Exodus. The Israelites, especially you masters in theology students, ought to know this story. Israelites have just been freed from the evil Pharaoh out of slavery in Egypt. They're on their way, or so they think, to the promised land, to Canaan. Now, if you are the travel agent or the career counselor for the Israelites, and they said, okay, our vocation has been offered to us by God to be this kind of people in this place, we just have to get there. You're the travel agent, what would you tell them? Well, it's a fairly direct route. Just straight northeast, go right around the Great Sea, and you'll go from Egypt to Canaan. Now you're walking, it's going to take a few months, right? But you can get there, it's a pretty straight shot. Now what's interesting is if you look in your Bibles, now most of us in here are Catholics, so I know there are no Bibles in the room, right? But if you look in the back of a modern Bible, look at scholarly reconstructions of the Exodus. Very interesting. Scholarly reconstructions. Any modern Bible will have it. You look at the actual route of the Israelites from Egypt to their vocation, to Canaan. Look at the actual route that they took. It was not direct. It was anything but direct. It was wild. It was all over the place. It was curvy. It doubled back. They were zigging when they should have been zagging. They were zagging when they should have been zigging. They were going south when they should have been going north. They were going west when they should have been going east. They were literally all over the map. Have you been there? Have you been there in some part of your life? Go in one direction when you thought you were going to end up going another direction. That was what their relationship with God was, one of wandering. Well, Exodus chapter 14, God has just told them to turn back again. They got to double back and go another way. I'm losing my clothing here. God has just told them they're going to have to double back. God says to them something very interesting, Exodus chapter 14. Check it in your Bibles if you don't believe me when you get home today. He says, Pharaoh is going to say something about you. Pharaoh is going to say that you are wandering aimlessly. You are wandering aimlessly in the land. God is saying that to the Israelites to tell them, when you start to hear that the big head honcho back home is saying this about you, don't believe it. Now, I've wondered for a long time, or at least I've wondered this for the past week, what does God mean by aimlessly, right? It's interesting that he says, Pharaoh's going to accuse you of wandering aimlessly. I think what God means is that Israelites, you can trust that your wandering is for a purpose. Don't let Pharaoh tell you you're doing it aimlessly. What we might call it today is something like a holy wandering. A holy wandering. That's when you and I, the ancient Israelites, are trying our best to be faithful to God to reach our vocation. We're going to make mistakes, we're going to double back, we're going to reverse course. It's not going to be easy, and there often won't be great syntheses that will make us feel like all is complete now. However, God shows the Israelites that God will stay with the Israelites when they wander. Won't God stay with you and I in our holy wandering, as opposed to an aimless wandering, a wandering that just says, you know what, it's all worthless, I'm just going to let the winds blow me where they may. Now, you graduates, are you ready for a commencement, not only into your vocation, yes, into your vocation, but not only into that, a commencement into a wandering, a commencement into a wandering. I am convinced that St. John's has prepared you for that commencement into wandering. And that as you wander, as several speakers have already said, you will look back and pull on the resources from St. John's, from your education, in order to wander well. So, how has St. John's taught you to be curious persons? Curious in such a way that you might be willing to change your plans from plan A to plan B, from plan B to plan C? How has St. John's taught you to be critical thinkers? So critical about your own experience, critical not in a negative way, but in a hard-thinking way. So critical about your experience, critical about what's going on in the world, critical about your own relationships, that you're willing to change plans to find the vocation. How has St. John's taught you to be responsible? Responsible for your life, responsible for your passions, responsible for other people, in a way that that responsibility might encourage you to switch direction, to turn back, double back, go west when you thought you should have been going east. St. John's, my friends, has prepared you not only for a vocation, but for a wandering. And as was true of the Israelites, it will also be true with you, that there is no place you can wander that God will not already be there, wandering with you. Now, I don't want to ever say to someone that they shouldn't wander, and I hope that you will all wander in a holy way. My only hope for you is that it will not take 16 apartments. I'm inspired by your presence here. I am so honored and humbled by this degree, and thank you for being so generous and gracious to me. Thank you, St. John's.
The Pax Christi Award is the highest honor awarded by St. John's Abbey and University. It is given to individuals who have distinguished themselves by lives that exemplify the ideals of St. Benedict. Father John Jack Davis was born and raised in Devil's Lake, North Dakota. He graduated from St. John's with a BA in philosophy in 1965 and a master's in divinity from the St. John's School of Theology in 1969. He was ordained a priest of the Fargo, North Dakota Diocese on June 14th of that year. 5 years later, he was able to fulfill a long-time dream when he joined the Missionary Society of St. James the Apostle, and he has served the people of Chimbote, Peru, since 1974, 30 years. At this time, he continues to serve the poorest of the poor. 85% of his parishioners do not have steady work. Those few that do work 9 to 12 hours a day for about $2, enough to purchase a jar of jam. Families live in homes consisting of loosely woven mats lined with newspapers, which frequently catch fire from the candles that are used to light the home. Elderly parishioners weave recycled plastic into round mats, which they sell in order to eat. Death threats were constant from either the Sendero Luminoso, the Shining Path guerrillas, or government forces that simply used indiscriminate violence. His parishioners are not only deficient in the material goods required for human dignity, they also lack a full share in the social and political life of the area. Through Jack's tireless work and the financial and human commitment of people throughout the United States, including students from St. John's and St. Ben's, the people of Chimbote now have access to medical care, an adult literacy program, preschool activities, soup kitchens, self-empowerment programs for women, and many more changes to an unjust social system. Recipient of the President's Award from the National Federation of Priests Councils, the Frente de Defensa Citizen of the Year Award from the University of Los Angeles in Chimbote, and the St. John's University Alumni Achievement Award, his apostolate is daily recognized by his parishioners. The Latin phrase Pax Christi means peace of Christ. We recognize in Father Jack Davis a man who does not accept charity without justice, a man who believes that the mission of the priest and every Christian is to both preach and practice charity, a man who is the prophetic voice of the voiceless, a man who denounces the injustices that keep the poor in poverty and deny them their rightful share of God's creation. Justice cries out. In the words of one of his mentors, Archbishop Patrick Flores, sí, se puede. Yes, it is possible. Father Jack, would you please stand? Father John Everett Davis, for the past 35 years, you have been a faithful servant and priest of Christ. A student of this university and School of Theology, ordained a priest of the Fargo Diocese, you responded to the missionary call and joined the Missionary Society of St. John the Apostle, serving these past 30 years in Chimbote, Peru. Challenged in ways that other mortals only read of, you confronted inhuman conditions and struggled to change society and its rules. You cried out for a new vision of the church, where the fundamental option for the poor was not just words from a meeting, but was, in fact, an essential issue for pastoral orientation. You emphasized that theology is not just to be learned, it is to be done, that it involves revolutionary action on behalf of the poor and oppressed. And out of this, theological perceptions will continually emerge. That immersion in the struggle for transforming society makes the message. We esteem you, Jack, for your tireless efforts to bring basic human dignity and health to the people of Chimbote. You have ministered to the poorest of the poor and remained faithful in the face of grave danger, unspeakable poverty, and ever-worsening social conditions. Through your wonderful powers of persuasion, you have told the story of these forgotten people and raised money throughout the United States for your many activities. You have built programs and facilities, including libraries, medical services, daycare, kindergartens, soup kitchens, a battered women's shelter, chapels, rehabilitation centers, and homes. Father Jack, you have given your life to those who have no voice. You have listened with the ear of your heart to the cry of the exploited. In their cry, you hear Jesus, who came to bring life and to bring it in abundance, not for a small minority, but for all women and men. You have made the peace of Christ real for the disinherited of this earth. For your love of the oppressed, we gratefully present to you Father John E. Jack Davis, Padre Juanito of Chimbote, Peru, with our highest honor, the Pax Christi Award, on this, the 9th day of May, 2004, in omnibus glorificetur Deus.
Maybe some of you have heard the story that they tell so often in Chimbote about the woman who was, the widow who was at a funeral, at a wake for her husband. and one after the other of her husband's friends got up and said all kinds of good things about him. And it went on and went on and went on. And finally the widow turned to her son and she said, "Go and check out in the coffin and make sure that's your father." It is indeed a pleasure to hear such kind words. Thinking on this Mother's Day, it was in 1963, having not been accepted to join or recommended to the Maryknoll Society, Mission Society, I joined the Diocese of Fargo. And in a room not very far from here, my mother, who had been a Presbyterian Sunday school teacher, was with me, and I presented her to Bishop Dworshak, Bishop of Fargo. And Bishop Dworshak held out his ring for my mother to kiss, and my mother looked at it and she says, "My, isn't that pretty?" And the bishop just took his hand back and looked at me. Abbot John, Brother Dietrich, distinguished faculty and staff, distinguished graduates, family and friends. I am very happy and honored to accept the Pax Christi Award for 2004 from this great institution that I am proud to call my alma mater. I ask God to grant me the wisdom and strength to live up to its noble ideas. I accept it in the name of the poor of Chimbote, who have for 29 and a half years have accepted me as one of their own, have taught me through their indomitable faith, and who have loved me and have enriched my life immeasurably. I begin my remarks today stating that I am very happy to be here receiving this award. In preparing for today, and deciding how to communicate to you what my 29 years in Peru have been like, I recalled a conversation I had several years ago with a young volunteer. He asked me, "Father Jack, are you happy?" Somewhat taken back by the directness of his question, I became silent. Then I responded, "No, I am not happy. I cannot be happy with all that surrounds me here in Chimbote. What surrounded me then, and continues to be present today, some 15 years later, are the very real effects of profound impoverishment. My religious training and my very faith tells me that I cannot be happy, nor can I preach to those who suffer that they should be happy in their misery. For I truly believe that it is not God's will that poverty exists. Poverty is the result of sin, the result of injustice. How can I be happy seeing children dying of curable and preventable diseases such as tuberculosis, typhoid, hepatitis, dying from subhuman living conditions, malnutrition, due to the difficulty of affording simple medicine? How can I be happy month after month, burying year after year the innocents that are eaten up by poverty and its unbelievably unsafe environment where my parishioners are forced to live? Chimbote, and nearly all of Peru for that matter, is rife with gangs, drugs, prostitution, corruption, horrible schools, and horrible curriculums, teachers that are ill-prepared, underpaid, and who even some days fail to show up for class or on occasion show up intoxicated. The youth turn to gangs because there is no hope that they may find work. There is no dream that through education they will emancipate themselves from the cycles of poverty and misery their parents endured and into which they were involuntarily cast. I cannot be happy knowing that women sell their bodies into prostitution, perhaps into a death sentence of AIDS, simply to provide food for their young children. I cannot be happy watching young men and fathers seeking to provide also for their children decide to abandon their families and cross dangerous borders looking for any kind of work, many never returning, or at least never returning the same. I cannot be happy seeing the once beautiful Bay of Chimbodi as it now sits repugnantly polluted and stinking of waste and trappings of overexploitation. I cannot be happy when I read of the international banking laws that permit the rich and corrupt officials of Peru to rob the people's money and hide it in protected banking accounts in the first world, staving off again and again the empty promises of jobs and development. The very hardness and cruelty that is played out on a daily basis before my eyes, and often regardless of whatever projects to the contrary we establish, makes 29 years of fighting to end poverty a very unglamorous and, yes, unhappy undertaking. All of these circumstances and many more not only make me unhappy, but sometimes they make me so angry that I lash out at the perpetrators of injustice. Shamefully, I must admit, I even lash out at the very victims of this cruel and unfair system when I see them day after day coming to my door to try to find a way to make ends meet because there is no other place to turn. I become frustrated because I don't have the resources to meet their needs. The Reverend William Sloan Coffin, Jr. makes it clear that anger does not have to end in mere frustration. He says, anger has a very important spiritual benefit. If you don't have anger, you end up tolerating the intolerable, and that is intolerable. There are, of course, days when the sun shines through the clouds. I have been blessed and touched by so many small things over these 29 years that would never have been possible had I been anywhere else. I have been happy, too, by the young people just like you, volunteers from these universities, energized by your reflective education in this place of peace and understanding, who have visited Peru and sought to serve the poor. Some of you came this year, 2004, and I pray some will come again. I am also happy knowing that some of you will leave St. John's and St. Ben's to dedicate yourselves to professions and lives of service to the less fortunate, fostered and inspired by your years here. Finally, I am also happy because I am confident that someone in this magnificent building this afternoon will be inspired by the ideals of this award to decide to dedicate time or resources to the noble cause of Pax Christi by working towards justice, peace, and equality for all.
John Henry Newman once said that a university is, according to the usual designation, an alma mater, kind, nourishing mother, knowing her children one by one, not a foundry or a mint or a treadmill. And so let us regard the graduates of 2004 one by one as they come forward to receive their degrees.
Will the candidates for the degree of Master of Arts and Master of Divinity please rise? Brother Dietrich, I present the candidates for the degrees of Master of Arts and Master of Divinity who have been approved by the faculty of the university.
By virtue of the authority committed to me, I confer upon you the degrees of Master of Arts and Master of Divinity which have been approved by the faculty of the university and for which you have been recommended. Dr. William Cahoy, Dean of the School of Theology and Seminary, please have the candidates come forward.
To Anne Elizabeth Dickinson, from Hawthorne Woods, Illinois, is conferred the degree of Master of Divinity. Catherine Marie Gillooly, from Davenport, Iowa, is conferred the degree of Master of Divinity. Danielle Amy Knott, from Mansfield, Pennsylvania, is conferred the degree of Master of Divinity. Brother Edward Russell Vabelin of the Order of St. Benedict, from St. John's Abbey, Collegeville, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Divinity. To Wendy Sue Altabell, from Waite Park, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Linda Marie Dietman Arnold, from Clear Lake, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Jennifer Ann Bushnell, from St. Paul, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Theology with a concentration in Church History. To Father Cristobal Quicoche of the Order of St. Benedict, from the Priory of San Jose and Quetzaltenango, Guatemala, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Liturgical Studies. To Kristen K. Kudrin, from Winona, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Alice Grace Duffy Meyer, from Austin, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Deborah Ann Hengel, from Sartell, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Diane Marie Huck, from Bismarck, North Dakota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Ernie Wayne Kochimba, from Gray Eagle, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Paula Ann Kuschel, from New Hope, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Joseph Robert Kresge, from St. Joseph, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Sister Teresa Ma Lei, from Xi'an, Shaanxi Province, China, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Brother Gerard James McMahon of the Order of St. Benedict, from Glenstall Abbey in Murrow County, Limerick, Ireland, is conferred the degree Master of Arts in Theology with a concentration in monastic studies. To Lisa Diane Murphy, from St. Paul, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Geraldine Ann Nathy Evans, from Avon, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Lisa Catherine New, from St. Cloud, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Rebecca Ann Nubson, from Greenbush, Minnesota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Sister Huang T. Mai Rose Pham of the Order of Preachers, from Bien Hoa Dong Nai, Vietnam, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Theology with a concentration in Scripture. To Cherie Joan Roschow from Dickinson, North Dakota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Kenneth H. Roschow from Dickinson, North Dakota, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Rebecca Jane Walsh from St. Paul is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Sister Pauline Chung Jing Yu from Jiangti City, Hebei Province, China, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. To Daniela Jupan from Arlington Heights, Illinois, is conferred the degree of Master of Arts in Liturgical Studies.
Will the candidates for the degrees of Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science please rise? Brother Dietrich, I present the candidates for the degrees of Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science who have been approved by the faculty of the University and the College of St. Benedict.
By virtue of the authority committed to me, I confer upon you the degrees of Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science, which have been approved by the faculty of the University and the College of St. Benedict, and for which you have been recommended. Dr. Rita Knazel, Academic Dean and Associate Provost, please have the candidates come forward.
I ask that you please hold your applause until all graduates have received their diplomas. Thank you. Candidates are asked to please come forward by row at the direction of the marshals. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts with honors, egregia cum laude. Matthew John Horning. John Nicholas Pack. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts with honors, summa cum laude. Michael Thomas Brackey, distinction in economics. Nathan Roman Brever. Timothy James Flagstad. Benjamin Joseph Garfunkel. Patrick John Hagerty, all college honors. Christopher John Hausman. Ryan Patrick Hines. Thomas Edwin Johnson. Daniel David Clockey. Matthew Ross Sizdek, distinction in psychology. Joshua John Whitrock. Alexi Joseph Young, all college honors. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts with honors, magna cum laude. Tyler Nathaniel Andress. Joseph Jerome Athman, distinction in computer science. Abraham Joseph Cass. Joseph Patrick Saransky. Sean Christopher Engel. John Oliver Freeman. Travis Stephen Gurgetz. Stephen Mark Hubner Glegg. Stephen Cole Green. Tracy John Grossman. Yosef Hendy Handoko, all college honors. Paul Robert Hansmeyer, all college honors. Adrian A. Harper Vassell, distinction in computer science. Eric Mark Hannon. Luke John Higgins. John Benjamin Hooley. James Elton Kuderer. Josiah James Leposki. Michael James Lawson. Alan Richard O'Donnell. Eric Stephen Ulrich. Ryan Paul Orwell. Lee Mark Patton. William Alexander Poling. Nicholas M. Sari. David Michael Sorn. Derek Joseph Tam. Kevin Richard Toski. Robert Aaron Westman. Matthew David Wilder. Stephen Joseph Young, all college honors, distinction in English. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts with honors, cum laude. Nicholas Michael Anderson. Adam David Barker. Brian Michael Blessing. Keenan Jason Carroll. Mark James Epsky. Jonathan Robert Fabian. Travis Edward Groats. Aaron Michael Heimer. Matthew Francis Hoffman. Joseph Clifford Hausman. Matthew Michael Hutton. Shane Ted Jensen. Tyler Burdette Johnson. Thomas Richard Jones. Dustin Patrick Carls, all college honors. Edward John Kasner. Justin William Kelly. Joshua Thomas Cook. Patrick Donald Malberg. Daniel Patrick Priner. John Paul Schell. Joseph Matthew Schmidt. John Matthew Schumacher. David Bruce Soma. Paul Russell Stenberg, all college honors, distinction in physics. Andrew Thomas Troyan. Kyle James Wilkus. Candidate for the degree of Bachelor of Science with honors, magna cum laude, Chad Michael Reuter. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Science, Christopher John Allen. Jason John Coleman. Andrew James Edwards. Colin Patrick Ryan. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts, Rio Aikawa. Patrick Mark Albrecht. Jonathan Paul Allender. Joseph Thomas Altendal. Kevin John Amdahl. Brian Christopher Anderson. Jared Ryan Anderson. Michael Thomas Anderson. Stephen David Angel. Carl Jacob Antelock. Adam Arthur Arakawa. Jesse Bruce Atkins. Andrew Lawrence Audit. Eric Joseph Axmacher. Max Patrick Barr. Julian Michael Banish. Noel Jacob Barrick. Aaron Patrick Barthel. Justin Michael Bartos. Ross Allen Bowerly. Christopher James Bedke. Michael John Baer. Guy Michael Belair. Matthew Adams Bennett. Adam Richard Benoit. Matthew William Bergman. Jordan Conway Bewley. Matthew John Beer. Todd Nicholas Blake. Charles Byron Robert Block. Jason Dale Blonigan. Matthew Christian Blum. Colt James Blunt. Zachary Thomas Bobbick. Nick Allen Boysen. Ryan Charles Booth. Sean McGinty Borg. Brady Stephen Borkowski. Robert John Bradley. Michael William Brady. Bradley Donald Brigham. Scott Joseph Brummelkamp. Brian Christopher Brooks. Jacob William Brown. Bo Matthew Bruggeman. Matthew John Bruns. Aaron Benjamin Bumgardner. Ross Allen Burgard. Michael Francis Burke. Nathan Kendall Burr. Christian Raleigh Butler. Ryan John Boos. Ryan Michael Caldwell. Connor Lawrence Callahan. Richard Fritz Carlbum. Andrew Seth Carlson. Christopher Lee Carlson. Zachary Charles Carlson. Justin Patrick Carroll. Justin Philip Cass. Timothy Michael Cheesebrough. Gerald Paul Shenvert. Joseph Earl Christensen. Benjamin Jacob Collins. Matthew David Kahn. Sean Michael Connor. Keith Robert Conrad. Patrick John Corey, all college honors. John Thomas Costello. David John Crawford II. Eric John Crawford. Bradley John Cronin. Cuthbert Akobi Cumberbatch. Nathaniel Walter Dahlbeck. Thomas Patrick Daly. Ryan Philip Damlow. Eric John Daniel. Matthew Robert Darling. Riley James Darvaux. David Joseph DeGrio. Austin Anthony DeCock. Adam Thomas Degelman. Cole Virgil Dybel. Christopher Michael Duffy. Kojo Gaiki Duncan. James John Durfee, all college honors, distinction in philosophy. Timothy James Durnan, all college honors, distinction in computer science. Brian Joseph Eder. Christopher John Edwards. John William Iser. Nicholas Anthony Elias. Christopher Lawrence Emond. Brian Ramsey Enseline. Lawrence Gregory Erickson, Jr. Zachary John Faber. Charles James Farmer. Michael Paul Fassner. Ryan William Feline. Jeffrey Thomas Fellman. John Thomas Ferguson. Benjamin Jacob Fisher. Brian Matthew Fisher. Benjamin James Flannery. Isaac John Flenner. Barry Douglas Folkins. Peter Francis Fox. Charles Patrick Fowler. Stephen Alexander Francis. Carl Daniel Gaida. Brandon Michael Geis. Brent Francis Generex. Nihal George, all college honors. Matthew Peter Germscheid. Christopher James Gervais. Stephen Michael Geschwind. Gregory Stephen Gassell. Anthony Gabriel Giancola. Daniel Gregory Gilbertson, all college honors. Stephen Robert Gilk. Peter Henning Gillette. Anthony Michael Gerard. Michael James Goldstein. Jeremy Melvin Goltz. Ronaldo K. Gordon, all college honors. William Sims Gorilla. Michael Eugene Granger. Ryan Lowell Green. Joshua Mark Griffel. Daniel James Grappoli. Richard Paul Gunderson III. Andy John Gunning. Thomas Raymond Haas III. Andrew John Hachia. Matthew Jesse Hagan. Adam Barry Hagee. Jonathan Eric Hambidge. Jacobs Wayne Hammond. Jeffrey Craig Hancock. Eric Gordon Hansen. Rafael Caceres Harrington. Michael Kirby Hartnett. Jamie John Hathaway. Brian William Howiller. James Patrick Hawes. Mark Edward Hedman Dennis. Carl Allen Henderson. Brett David Hendrickson. Nathan Earl Hetrick. Zachary James Higgins. Charles John Hipp. Aaron Christopher Hirsch. Anthony Martin Hurty. David Alfred Hain. John Anthony Hofer. Marcus Andrew Hoffer. Anthony Hugh Hoffman. Eric John Holmgren. Jeremy James Hood. Michael Anthony Hodacek. Matthew Gregor Howard. Nicholas Alexander Howard. Michael Patrick Huffman. Ryan Matthew Hurtado. Jared Wayne Eberall. Mark William Patrick Ingram. Jacob Giles Jasner. Matthew Sidney Johnson. Matthew William Johnson. Trevor Adam Johnson. Zachary Andrew Johnson. Timothy Abner Johnston. Brian Leon Jones. Samuel Donald Jordan. William Edward Judd. Alexander Daniel Jude. Jeffrey Stephen Kozrowski. Adam Edward Kaiser. Daniel John Paul Kaplan. Brian Evan Keeler. Anthony John Kempf. Pius Gui Cameo. Matthew Joseph Kirby. Robert Emmanuel Kirsch. Matthew Allen Klein. Ryan Matthew Klinkner. Peter Dean Knabley. Bradley Richard Coltis. Nate Thomas Kapetka. Andrew John Kozlowski III. Andrew Paul Krejci. Peter Andrew Kren. Craig Eloise Christoph. Matthew Paul Kunkel. Justin Philip Kirsch. Aaron Joseph Lace. Andrew John Lullaberty. Nathan John Langer. Cody Claire Lamour. Casey John Line. Ryan Todd Leitschuh. Jeremy Richard Lind. Carl Allen Lindgren, All College Honors Distinction in English. Luke Allen Lassell. Aaron Michael Liss. Eric Francis List. Ryan Patrick Loney. Andrew Stephen Lundeen. Jarrett Dale Lundquist. Timothy Patrick Lyons. David Anthony Macalena. Andrew Gregory Malone. Brady John Markle. Michael John Marschel. Matthew Robert Martin. Richard Wayne Martinson. Nicholas Allen Marvin. Brenton Paul Masika. Andrew Joseph Maurer. Nicholas Peter Mouse. Patrick James May. David Michael McGee. Darren Patrick McGill. Patrick Liam McKenzie. Jared Robert Maley. Jason James Miracle. Jose M. Meza. Mitchell Philip Michelson. Michael Stephen Miller. Jeremy Paul Moore. Allie John Moyne. Nicholas David Moonen. John Dolan Moore. Kyle Gregory Morehouse. Trent Timothy Morgan. Arthur Edward Morrissey. Peter David Mueller. Joseph Patrick Murphy. Andrew James Meyer. Marcus Patrick Needham. Benjamin William Nelson. Joshua Martin Nelson. Noah William Nelson. Philip Horton Newman IV. Joseph Ryan Newton. Jeremiah Joseph Novak. John Mark Novak. Reed David Nystrom. Thomas Patrick O'Keefe. Casey Shea O'Malley. Jason Thomas Ogard. Paul Stephen Olson. Ethan Andrew Olson. Christian Anders Olson. Jacob John Oman. Joshua James Orman. Michael William Orth. Christopher Brian Osborne. Brandon Richard Overman. Benjamin Harold Pardon. Bach Joseph Parker. Joel Robert Paulson. Jesse Ray Pedersen. Jordan Django Pepper. Nicholas Felix Prococo. Corey Matthew Peterson. Stephen John Peterson. Adam Jeffrey Pettit. Andrew James Flipson. Lucky Tan Fan. David Carlson Philp. Adam Michael Pitts. Jonathan Michael Pluger. Matthew John Papel. Jeffrey Allen Paulzine. Chad Donald Powers. Brandon Michael Price. Michael Jeffrey Preby. Nathan Scott Proshek. Ryan Michael Radmer. Matthew Mark Rader. Travis Adam Rydell. Thomas Matthew Racco. Brian Paul Rasmussen. Justin Timothy Rath. Andrew Burton Ron. Ryan Mark Rinke. Jedediah Robert Riggleman. Paul Arnold Ristvet. Jeremy Scott Revord, all college honors. Timothy Mark Robidoux. Herbert Francisco Rodriguez. Mark Thomas Andrew Rowe. Gregory Jason Raring. Ryan Jamie Rohn. Philip James Rojeski. Joseph Allen Rolfus. Benjamin Karsten Roselius. Dennis George Ross. Blake Joseph Rosso. Jason Michael Runk. Michael Walter Russert. Christopher Michael Russo. Michael Joseph Ryan. Benjamin David Rydeen. Christopher Scott St. Clair. Jamal Ola Saladin. Thomas Raymond Sauer. Richard Charles Sadi. Matthew Quednow Shader. Benjamin Mark Scheffler. Andrew Charles Scherer. Chad Colgrove Shilpin. Dana Allen Schleicher. John Edward Schmansky II. Chad Joseph Schmidt. Scott Richard Schmitz. Chris Jacob Snyder. Brian John Snazy. Robert John Schreiber. Paul Lee Schreiner. Dustin John Schuett. Joshua Peter Schumacher. Chad David Schwartz. Thomas Roy Sebo. Brian Scott Singer. Alexander Richard Sari. Paul Michael Sexton, Distinction in Computer Science. Mark Andrew Sherva. Adam Jeffrey Shevland. Kevin Andrew Sieben. Eduardo Sugamele Silva. Peter Mark Simone. Andrew Paul Shodin. Stephen John Skoranek. Keith Edward Slinger. Nathaniel James Slinkard. Joshua Jesse Dewar Smith Hainan, all college honors. Eric John Solberg. Michael Oliver Solom. Brian Scott Sunderby. Jared Stephen Spillman. Nathaniel Paul Springer, all college honors. Michael Thomas Staffa. Christopher Charles Stapleton. Joel Robert Starkey. Andrew Raymond Stayberger. Maxwell George Stein. John Thomas Stillwell. Christopher John Stocker. Michael Glenn Stoffel. Stephen Michael Stoll. Mark Charles Stoner. John Lucian Straub. Christopher Robert Stroh. Devlin Dominic Stubbs. Lamone Barrington Stubbs. Andrew Paul Sudbeck. Christopher Joseph Swirsky. Marcus Alexander Syverson IV. Joey Lee Tower. Tyler James Taggets. Robert Michael Tejan. Gerald Robert Thamert. Joshua John Tice. Christopher Robert Thielen. Nicholas Robert Tillman. Jesse Lewis Tim. Andrew James Tongan. Kevin Clarence Treadle. Kevin Michael Truckenmiller. Jacob Michael Vosick. Seth Aaron Vanderloop. Frank Raymond Verdeja. Brian Michael Vetter. Brent Allen Vogt. Keith Douglas Voss. Matthew James Voss. Justin Lee Wakeham. Jonathan Patterson Wasco. Andrew Mark Weaver. Trent Matthew Weber. Paul Edward Simonet Wegerson. Ryan Francis Wynot. Philip John Wykes. Raymond John Welsh III. Christopher Bradley Weiner. Alan Matthew Wilczek. Kevin Glenn Willie. Ryan Michael Winkles. Nicholas Allen Winsher. Kyle Patrick Worth. Louis Henry Whitrock III. Michael Edward Wohl. James Wyman Wallach. Riley Blue Woodruff. Joseph Michael Woodward. Gregory Glenn Warden. Joseph Edward Ronka. Matthew Christopher Yank. Anthony Dwayne Iglesias. Kevin Patrick Zangs. Joseph Roy Zimmer. Daniel Patrick Zimney. Jack Martin Zipoy. Please join me in giving our graduates a round of applause.